It's the only thing that slowly stops the ache. But it's made of all the things I have to take. Jesus never ends. It works its way inside. If the pain goes on.
Hi guys, and welcome to my showcase and tutorial for motorbike racing. Motorbike racing is a plugin that allows you to build and host racetracks in-game. The plugin is integrated with the track building system, which gives you full control over where and how you build your racetracks. Players can compete for prizes for winning, and bragging rights for completing the fastest lap for each race. Races are also stored against the map file name, allowing for races that have been built specifically for certain maps to automatically load when the map is started up. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a new map inside of this prefab, which is the racetrack, dirt bike racetrack that monsterqueen has so kindly given us. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in the build command. So the parameters are build map space the map name that we want to give it. So we're going to call this one dirt. Now when we type that command in, you can see on the left hand side there is some sort of a key around what buttons we need to use to build the map. So the first button is the use button. So you can see when I press the E button by default, it'll create a new checkpoint. If I press the R button, it will delete it. If I press the hold down sprint while that is there, it'll increase the size, and duck will decrease the size. Fire third is what's responsible for creating our spawn positions. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the first position here. This is the start line. So the first place that you put down a position is always going to be the start line. So we're going to press E, and we're going to make this bigger. So generally, these are all box colliders. So generally, a player will need to go through these colliders in order to hit the next checkpoint. You can see these ones here are checkpoints, and what it'll do is it'll draw a position or draw a line between each checkpoint for each position you create. So what you want to do is you basically want to go around the map and create these checkpoints, making sure that the size of them is large enough to be able to cover the edges of whatever racetrack you're building it in. Generally, when a player is racing, they'll be able to see. You can set the config so they can see these boxes rendered for the next checkpoint. So if you don't have any natural sort of looking track, you can generally show them what direction they need to go. So we're just going to go and quickly run and create our checkpoints, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's completed. Alright, now that we've created our map, what we're going to do is we're going to type in /save map. And that's going to save our map positions here. Now if we ever want to make an adjustment to this map and edit things, we can type in /build map and type in the map name again, and it's going to bring out our previous profile. So if we want to make the last position bigger or smaller, we can to our liking, and then again just hit save map when you're done with your editing. So that's it from the map building side of things. So let's get in and test this map. Okay, so to test the map, what we want to do is we want to basically start a race. So you can do this by typing in start race, and that'll give you your current maps. So you can do start race, say dirt, which is the new one we just built. And it's going to start a lobby. Your lobby will be longer than 10 seconds, but I've lowered mine for testing purposes. Normally you type in join race and then the race name, but because this is the only active race, you can just type in join race. Now a couple of things are going to happen here. The first thing is we're going to start a little countdown, which is our our lights here. But you can also see in the chat box we have our fastest lap, and no lap records have been set. So because this is our first run through. Now a couple of things you can also notice: that when you hit these checkpoints, the next checkpoint gets rendered. You can turn that off in the config if you don't want it. So on a map like this, it's probably not required, but you know, if you're doing something that's sort of out more in the open world, then it's probably a good one to have. Another thing you'll also notice is the icon at the top of the screen. It's what you call a bar map, which is also progressing as I hit each checkpoint. See, basically the number of checkpoints determine how big the map is. So, you know, more checkpoints you have, the more accurate your player icons are going to be. And if you've got lots of players in your game, it's going to show each of their icons at the top there, which is just simply the cached versions of their Steam profile name, the Steam profile IDs. So we're just going to complete the lap here, coming around the last couple of corners. And what will happen is this icon, when I hit the start line, it's going to go to the beginning and hit the next lap. So on the right hand side you can see my current lap time, the time left on the race, and the current laps. And then when I hit the check the finish line there, it's increased it. I've just set a new lap record for myself at 1 minute 10 seconds, and I can see we're currently on 2 out of 3 laps. So let's go for the next lap and see if we can beat that record. See if we can trigger the message that you receive when you get a better lap time. So you can see here that we've set ourselves a new lap record, 1 minute 8 seconds and 563 milliseconds. So we're going to finish our final lap and I'll show you what happens when the race ends. Okay, so when you finish past the finish line, you'll see that you get the HUD on the top showing your position. Now normally what will happen is, if there are more than one racer, will allow the top 3 finishers to finish the race before it closes the race down. If there's only 2 races, it'll only allow so 1 or 2 races, it'll only allow first place position. If there's 3 races, it'll allow first and second place position, and if there's 4 or more races, it'll allow first, second, and third place positions. So that's it from that perspective. So what we can do now is we can open up the scoreboard and we can type in R score. We can see the different tracks that we've got active on this map, as well as the best lap times for each. So we can see here Derby, I've got best lap here versus the other players who have tried this, as well as the amount of wins. Another one here, test racetrack, and then we've got the dirt, which is the new one we've just created. And best lap is 1 minute and 4 seconds and 250 milliseconds. So this little scoreboard will get your players competing against each other for the fastest laps of a course. And they can access it at any point. If you want to close it, you just click anywhere to close it. And that's it for the demonstration purposes. So let's jump into the configuration. Alright, so we're just going to take it step by step for the configuration. I'll show you what each of the settings will handle. So the first one is our sound settings, and these are the countdown sound effects for the lights when the race is starting. So these are the little beeps, and then this is the final beep when the race begins. Build settings are basically related to building maps. So what's the default sort of size of the checkpoints when you press E down to create a new checkpoint? How fast should they change? Should the colliders change size when you're sprinting or ducking? And the distance between lights for the start area. We have race settings here, which pertains to the actual settings for the race itself. So you can see how long is the lobby time, reminder messages in chat, letting players know that the race is on. Setting one final reminder 10 seconds before the race begins. The delay before the race countdown begins. This is basically how long it kind of gives players to teleport and load everything in before the actual lights appear and starts counting down the race. The lights countdown amount. This is basically the little beeps you hear each time the lights are counting down for a minimum of 4 seconds. Minimum number of players that the event can run with is 1. I think this is set to 2 or 3 by default, but basically if you want to allow sort of players to get in there and do time trials and play by themselves, you can set that to 1. Maximum number of players that can join an event. Now this is basically going to be capped by the amount of spawn points that you create, so you can set this value to as large as you like, but it's only going to let 6 players into the event if there are only 6 spawn positions for that map. Maximum time a race can go for. This is 10 minutes by default. This is just simply cancels the race if it goes for longer than 10 minutes. The default amount of laps you can override with the commands by starting the race with the command is 3. So if you want to override the command, so the default laps, you can say start race and then race name and then say 6 laps, and that'll do 6 laps instead of 3. A time the player has to reach another checkpoint before they're kicked. So this is basically an AFK sort of handling setting. So if you don't want players to get kicked out of the race for being AFK, then set that to a very large number. But basically what it means is it'll kick the player if they haven't reached a new checkpoint in less than 60 seconds. Time after dismounting from their vehicle before a player is kicked. 0 is basically no kick, which will allow them to dismount and run away from their bike if they want to. But default is 5 seconds, which means if they're off their bike for more than 5 seconds, it'll kick them out of the race and despawn their bike. Maximum distance that a player can be from the start line. So from the start line, which is basically how far away from the arena can they go. So if you've got a very long arena, then you want to kind of set this value to what you think is right, but -1 means that there is no limit and they won't get kicked for going too far away from the start line. 0 is based on the furthest point, and above 0 is a manual distance if you want to set a manual distance for your arenas. Only spawn the lights along the ground. This basically is the little blue lights that you saw at the start line. So by default they'll spawn in around the collider itself. If you only want them to spawn across the ground, then set that to true. These are the assets for the lights themselves. You can change them as you require. And this is the distance setting for each rust meter. It'll spawn a light along the axis of the edge of the collider. Draw a box around the next checkpoint when a player enters the checkpoint. So, for example, if they go through the start line, it'll then draw checkpoint 1, and then if they go through checkpoint 1, it'll draw checkpoint 2 for about 10 seconds. And this is the attire settings. So, list of wearable items that players are given to wear. So we've got here basically just lists of different items. You can have multiple items in each list here. But basically, I've just done the hazmat suits for the default ones. So each player is kind of identifiable for anyone who wants to spectate. Event settings. So players, like a blacklist of items that players cannot bring into the event. So you can add item short names in here to prevent them from bringing in certain items that may break if they leave. Lists of commands that players cannot use while at the event. So things like your backpack commands or your teleport commands, that sort of thing. You add all of them here. Prevent players from using the skill tree buffs. So if you've got buffs on there which increase motorcycle speed, you can prevent them from using them. Use event helper to schedule the events. Basically it means that it'll automatically start a new event using the event helper auto start system, and as well as supporting vote map with event helper. So if you run any of my other event plugins. Command settings, so these are the command settings to join race, leave race, restore items and redeem prizes. And then we've got our prize settings here. So basically prizes are based on placement, so you can set as many placement options as you like if you want to give more participation sort of prizes. And you can set the minimum amount of players in the race for the prizes to be awarded. By default this should be set to 3, which means that if there's any less than 3 players in the race, no one is going to get any prizes. But if there is 3 or more, then prizes will be awarded. And the way prizes work is they'll be basically given prize tokens based on their position that they can then type the redeem command to redeem the prizes, and it'll roll an X amount of items on the table, and it'll give a random amount of economic rewards or server reward points based on between your high and low values here. So if you have 6 items on here and you want run roll the table, it's going to choose one of these 6 items and then give them a random amount between these 2 values. So it'll support custom items and whatnot as well. And then that's it from the config. So down the track I might add support for custom commands and that sort of thing if you want to give them, like things like epic loot rewards or cooking rewards or skill tree XP and that sort of thing. But that'll be for a future update. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoy. Any feedback, feel free to hit me up, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, enjoy the plugin.